Hey everybody, and welcome to Faith. My name is Scarlett.
And I'm Denise.
And we're so glad that you're here.
If you're new, welcome to Faith Church. We are a community of broken people who are all on a journey towards Jesus. So no matter where you're at, you belong in the family. We would love for you to head to faithauburn.info to fill out a Connect card so someone can reach out to you. You can follow us on social media by searching
Faith Church Auburn on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
If you're ready to partner with us financially, you can go to faithauburn.info and click the button that says Give. You can give one-time gift, or you can have a scheduled gift set up as well. Without your generosity, we could not do what we do.
Thank you for supporting our church. Here's what's happening inside Faith Church right now.
First is Next Steps. Saturday, March 18th, we're hosting a class here at the church for everyone interested in knowing more about Faith Church's core values or interested in becoming a member. Free childcare will be provided. To sign up, visit faithauburn.info. We look forward to seeing you there.
Second is Easter services. You and your family are invited to celebrate with us at Faith Church.
We'll sing together, hear a message relevant to your life, and witness multiple people get baptized as they share their stories with us. Our Kids Zone will be open at every service, so bring the whole family with you. We will be celebrating both Saturday night and Sunday morning, so we encourage you to pick a time and invite your family and friends to join you. RSVP at faithauburn.info.
Third is Faith Kids. Here at Faith, kids are very important.
We want to help families raise world changers for Jesus, and we love having fun while we do it. Sunday, March 26th, we are hosting an informational gathering for anyone who wants to learn more about volunteering in one of the many areas of Faith Kids. Lunch and childcare will be provided, so to sign up, visit faithauburn.info.
We'll see you there!
In the summer of 2008, I was 20 years old, going into my sophomore year of college. And as an end of summer experience, my friend Tom and I were headed to New Hampshire to do an overnight backpacking trip up in the White Mountains. And our plan was to drive up, sleep in the car, and then head out early the next morning to hit the trail. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and we were driving north through a small town called Twin Mountain. And as we're driving, we got the radio blasting, the windows down, and we're excited for the journey that's in front of us, the adventure that we were going to have on the trail. And you know, Tom's in the passenger seat, I'm driving, and I took my eyes off the road for, maybe like 3-4 seconds. I turned to Tom, we're singing out the lyrics to some classic rock song as we're cruising down the highway. And when my eyes met the road again, that's when I saw it. But it was too late. And there was no time to swerve, no time to brake, no time to avoid what was right in front of us. And I still remember the image. When I close my eyes, I can see that moose that was right there, and we were just about to hit it. And we did hit it. And this moose came pelting into the windshield. We knocked it off its feet. It hit the windshield knocked it loose into the car where we were still there. And I still remember how I kept driving for another 500 feet. As I was in shock as we just hit this moose, and there's air blasting in our faces because we're going 45, 55 miles per hour. There's glass flying in the car. There's moose hair blowing into our faces, and I still remember the blood-curdling scream of my friend as he's like, ah! Ah! Freaking out as we just hit a moose. And by some miracle, we were still alive, and the only thing broken was not any bones in our body, but the body of my car. And these are pictures from the next day. I remember we went back to the scene of the crime and seeing the damage, thinking, how am I still alive? If I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, I would not have survived. The glass from the windshield would have impaled my face, and I really sincerely believe that God sent his angels that night to protect my friend and I. And that's the reason I'm alive today. But here's the thing, all of that could have been avoided had I kept my eyes on the road. Marriage is a lot like a road. And as you travel down the road of marriage, there's going to be obstacles that are going to make their way onto your path. And if you're not careful, if you don't pay attention, then those things that can break your marriage are going to jump out onto the road. And one day you'll be standing before the wreckage of your marriage thinking, I didn't see this coming. With each year that passes in your marriage, you're 1 mile marker further down the road. And some miles are harder than others. That first year, that first mile of marriage is tough because, you get into a marriage with all of these expectations and it doesn't turn out how you thought it might. I'm just going to give you a heads up. Watch out for mile marker 7. The seventh year of marriage is rightly called the 7-year itch. And that's the year where you're driving through moose country and there's, everywhere you turn, there's another obstacle in your way trying to trip you and your spouse up. You got to pay attention. You got to turn your high beams on and get ready to swerve or you're not going to make it. See, it's no wonder that the average length of a marriage that ends in divorce is 7.8 years. And when I think back to Kendall and I's 7th year of marriage, we experienced those bumps and those potholes, those animals that we had to swerve to avoid. Divorce is prevalent. Divorce is prevalent. It's everywhere. It's touched every single one of us in one way or another. And maybe you watched your parents go through that or your grandparents go through that. I've watched some of you walk through it. And right now, some of you are walking through it right now. Divorce has touched you. It's touched your friends, your family, your coworkers. It's everywhere. According to the American Psychological Association, about 40% of first marriages end in divorce. Second marriages, statistic is 60%. 60% of second marriages end in divorce. And third marriages, 73%. So the more times you get married, the more likely you are to get divorced. And since COVID, marital conflicts and divorce inquiries have soared. Divorce lawyers are reporting that they're getting about 3 to 4 divorce inquiries and calls a day, when prior to COVID, it was much less. The UK's largest family law firm, they reported a 95% increase in divorce inquiries during the pandemic. And women are the primary ones driving that surge in interest. So for a lot of couples, sheltering in place shook their peace. Sheltering in place with someone who you're not so good with shook your peace. And think of all the division nationwide over the past few years. As you look at our nation, you look at all the division, disagreements over politics, vaccines, COVID restrictions, masks, whether or not to mask, racial tensions, all these things. Now imagine sheltering in place with someone who's totally on the other end of the spectrum from you. It's no wonder that people are looking to give up and get out of their marriages. Every 42 seconds, there's a divorce in America. That means that every time a couple recites their wedding vows, which takes about 2 minutes, 3 couples divorce. See, by the end of this online service that you're watching right now, somewhere around 75 to 100 couples will have divorced. See, divorce is prevalent. It's everywhere. But divorce is also preventable. And just like my moose incident could have been prevented if I'd paid better attention, divorce can be prevented if you pay attention to the right things. And today, I'm so excited to share with you what I believe is the secret to a lasting marriage that can make it past mile marker 7. It's wisdom that can help you make it to the finish line of marriage. And this wisdom is found in the same book that we've been walking throughout this series. And the book is called Song of Songs. Today we're concluding this series we've been in called Sittin' in a Tree, a 5-week series bringing wisdom around love, marriage, and sex. And if you missed any of those past sermons, you can go to our website and watch the other parts. But today's message is so important. It's so important because whatever relational stage you find yourself in, this applies to you. Whether you're single, dating, engaged, married, divorced, this secret to a lasting marriage is something that all of us can apply to any relationship, romantic or platonic. See, after my accident, I was hesitant to get in the car again. I was anxious. I remember just driving back to school, so anxious. You know, it's at night, and this was just a few nights after I had hit that moose. And it's at night, and I remember a plastic bag swept across the road, and I almost caused an accident as I slammed on my brakes thinking, what animal am I about to hit? See, I was terrified to get back in the car. I was terrified to drive again because I didn't want to risk. I didn't want the risk that was associated with driving. In the same way, some of you, you're hesitant to marry, to ever get married because of the risk. Or maybe you've had a bad marriage and you're hesitant to remarry because of the risk. In fact, the road of marriage is becoming the road less traveled. I mean, who would want to travel the road of marriage when it's marked with all kinds of hazards and horrors and animals that can jump out in front of you? See, the marriage rate in America has been declining significantly over the past several years. Young people are waiting longer to get married, sometimes 5 years after the typical age. And some young people aren't even considering it at all for forever. Like, they don't want to ever get married. And some of that, let me just say, some of that is healthy. In fact, the statistics show that the younger a couple is when they get married, hear this, the younger a couple is when they get married, the more likely they are to get divorced. So there's something to be said about not rushing into a marriage just because it's the cultural thing to do. You know, it's the American dream. You got to get married, you got to buy a house, you got to have 2.5 kids and do all the things, right? Don't rush into a marriage just because it's the cultural thing to do. But hear me say this, to discount marriage completely because of the risk, to discount marriage because of the risk of trials and things coming up in front of that marriage road, to throw out the baby with the bathwater, that's a serious problem for us. Because while the marriage road has its risks, it also has its rewards. And if I never get back in a car again, if I never got back in that car, I would have missed out on all of the adventures that life has thrown my way. And the risks are always there, lurking in the woods, but the reward is worth it. See, marriage is an adventure worth risking it for. But if you want to make it, if you want a lasting marriage, you need the wisdom that we're going to discover today. So here's the question. What is the secret to a marriage that's secure? What's the secret to a marriage that's secure? A marriage that lasts, that stands through thick and thin, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, for, in sickness and in health. We pay a lot of money to stand before a lot of people to recite those words. And no one on their wedding day stands before their friends and family and thinks, I can't wait to go back on these vows. So for those of you who are married, but you're working through some hard things, see, marriage is worth the risk. It's worth the fight. So keep fighting for your marriage. For those of you who are single and ready to mingle or dating or you're engaged, start preparing now for the journey of marriage. Don't wait until you get in the car with someone. Listen to the wisdom today while you're driving solo. Some of you may have failed marriages. Let me just say this. Just because you have a failed marriage does not mean you are a failure. God's not done with your story. And what we're going to discover today can help you whether you'll ever marry again or not. See, the wisdom we're going to discover today is for all of us. Even if you're not a Christian and you're watching today, I believe that the secret that we're going to uncover today, it has the power to transform your marriage, your relationships, and your life. And this wisdom has to do with animals, but not with a moose. Today we're talking about a different kind of animal that you have to watch out for. And we're going to pick it up in Song of Songs chapter 2, verse 15. It says this, "Catch for us the foxes." So today we're not talking about moose, we're talking about foxes. Foxes. All right. Now, remember, this is the book called Song of Songs. Do you know any songs about foxes? I was considering, queuing up the song and dancing around it. What does the fox say? Ying, 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 ying. I've decided against it. I'm not going to do that. But if you want to, pause this right now and go blast that song with your kids, that's a great song. Okay, but I'm going to give you the secret up front here today. The secret to a marriage that's secure, okay? Right off the bat, I'm going to give it to you. Catch the foxes. Let's say it together, wherever you are. Catch the foxes, right? If you want to make it in your marriage, past mile marker 5, 6, 7, if you want to have a marriage that's secure, that lasts, you have to catch the foxes, right? So what are the foxes? Foxes represent anything in your marriage that can damage it. It could be an addiction. It could be an emotion. It could be an old flame from high school, right? Your marriage needs to be protected from these foxes, and we're going to see why. But catching foxes, it's not one person's job. So you notice what the song says. Catch for us the foxes. Catch for us the foxes. This is a combined effort that involves teamwork. One person can't be expected to pull all the weight. Yes, you may have a fox that broke your spouse's trust in you, but if you're taking the steps to find freedom, then they should be taking the steps to find healing. And I've seen too many marriages fail because one person was completely unwilling to forgive. See, unforgiveness is a fox that needs to be caught if you want the vineyard of your marriage to bloom. So now some of you are, you're engaged. Some of you, maybe you're newlyweds and you're thinking, this is good for all those other couples, but our vineyard, we got no foxes. We never fight, everything's good. Well, the song goes on to say this. It says, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom, right? These little foxes. Sometimes these foxes, they're big, but sometimes these foxes are little. They're seemingly insignificant. And, early on in a relationship, if you're early on in those stages, those annoyances about the other person, they can actually be kind of cute. The way that she snores, when she falls asleep, the way he leaves his shoes around the house, or maybe you're engaged and there's some red flags, but you love each other, so your love can conquer any issues, any red flags, all these issues can just be dealt with later, and you just push them to the side. Let me hear me say this. You got to catch those foxes now. You have to deal with them because while the foxes might be easy to ignore right now, they're building a den in the corner of your vineyard, just waiting to wreak havoc on you. And if you don't catch those foxes, they're going to catch you. So marriage is like a road, but marriage is also like a vineyard where the grapes are in bloom and the wine of your marriage can taste really good. Your marriage can produce a Sauvignon Blanc, or I don't even know if I'm saying that right, Pinot Noir, Your marriage can be full of wonderful fruit, the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all those things. Your marriage can produce wonderful wine, or it can be spoiled and ruined by little foxes that run throughout it. How many of you watching are into gardening? If you're into gardening, type it in the comments. I love gardening. Right, maybe that's you. I don't love gardening personally, but maybe you've grown tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers, right? Whatever it is, when that plant starts to bloom, you got to watch out. You got to protect it because wildlife are going to swoop in and steal the fruit of your labor. So to protect your garden, you need fences, right? You set up fences to keep animals out. See, your marriage, like this vineyard, needs fences as well. You got to have boundaries around your marriage to protect against those predators that are looking to swoop in and ruin your garden. But here's the good news about foxes. Here's the good news. The damage that foxes do is reversible. Foxes eat the fruit, but they leave the root. Right? The fox doesn't go down to the root and eat everything. They leave the roots because they want more fruit to come. And that's the good news for us. So if you can catch the foxes and deal with them, there's chance for your marriage to have growth again, for your vineyard to produce that growth again. And that's true of your marriage, right? Maybe you feel like the damage that you've done is irreversible and there's no hope for your marriage. See, the secret to a lasting marriage is to catch the foxes, stop them in their tracks, and deal with them quickly so that you can cultivate the vineyard of your marriage once again. All right, so let's talk specifics. What are the foxes? See, your honey may be foxy, but she is not the fox. All right? What the writer of this song is saying is that there are certain things that come into your marriage to destroy it. And they need to be stopped and caught. So what are those things? The foxes could be many things, a lot of things. But divorce lawyers, as I was Googling this, they've shared the top 3 reasons that couples divorce. And they're the same topics that I actually cover every time I meet with a newly engaged couple who thinks they're ready for marriage. We talk about these things to prepare for it. See, the 3 foxes that ruin marriages more than any other are fighting, infidelity, and finances. And because I'm a pastor, I tried my best to alliterate these, but we're going to talk about each of these. So first, there's the fox of fighting, which involves how you communicate and navigate conflict with your spouse. Right, so how did your family handle conflict growing up? Did they kind of avoid it by beating around the bush and being passive aggressive? Or did they just come out and fight it out through verbal brawls where people would leave like with these emotional wounds? Right, those are 2 ends of the spectrum, right? So how did you handle conflict growing up, and how did your spouse handle conflict? When you come together, you're coming from different places. There's a right way to go about our communication and our conflict. The Apostle Paul writes in Ephesians 4:26 through 27, he says, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger while you're still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold." See, here's the thing. When you mishandle your anger, you're giving the devil a field day. You're allowing that fox to run through the vineyard of your marriage. And the devil's got his footprints and his footholds in you when you don't deal with your anger. But when you decide to properly channel your anger and you can work through that conflict, that's where growth can begin again. That's where you can catch that fox. Now notice it says, in your anger, do not sin. Now listen, you're going to be angry. Anger is an emotion, but it's not a sin. The sin is how we respond to our anger. So it's okay to be angry, but what you do with that anger matters. So Paul says, don't go to bed angry. Work things out with your spouse. What this means is to deal with your anger quickly. If you've got a conflict with someone, deal with it quickly. Don't let it fester overnight. Don't let it build. Here's the thing about anger. Psychologists tell us that anger is a secondary emotion. What that means is that anger is always in response to another emotion that we're feeling. And one of the best ways that we can work on our communication and fighting in marriage is to go deeper to uncover, why am I feeling this emotion? Why am I angry right now? And when we can get to the root of that anger, we can bring that to the right person. Maybe you're angry at your boss, but you're taking out sideways on your wife. Maybe you're anxious about your kids, but it's coming out as anger towards your husband. See, catching the foxes involves digging deeper into your emotions, specifically anger, so that we can communicate clearly with each other, so we can fight fair. So, fighting. Fighting can be a fox that runs through your vineyard. What else? Infidelity, unfaithfulness, adultery. This is another major marriage killer. Let me ask you, what expectations did you have when you came into your marriage? Maybe you got into a marriage expecting your spouse to just always be kind of sexually available to you, and just always be wearing lingerie, always be, like whatever it is. And your expectations didn't meet that reality. And so what do? You start using pornography to kind of fulfill that fantasy. But that only does it for so long until it builds into an emotional or maybe a sexual affair. And maybe a girl you used to date in high school sends you a DM, and before you know it, you're lying. You're cheating. So you got to catch that fox before it even starts. You got to take those thoughts captive and submit them to Christ. You got to flee from sexual temptation. You got to put on the whole armor of God. Let me say this. Marriage does not fix your porn problem. Guys, you got to catch that fox. I have done premarital counseling with several couples, and for one of the sessions, I always speak one-on-one with the guy, and the subject of pornography comes up. And almost every time, the answer I get back is, well, I used to struggle with this, but, it's not a problem anymore. And I say, okay, good. Now stop lying to me and tell me the truth. I don't really come out like that, but on multiple occasions, I've had guys come back to me months after their wedding day and say, I lied. I'm still struggling and I need help. So you got to catch that fox. Marriage will not fix your porn problem. Porn is everywhere. That fox is everywhere. It's sexy, it's accessible, and that fox will destroy the vineyard of your marriage. So if you're struggling right now with pornography, with sexual temptation, bring that to God. Bring that to an accountability partner. Find someone who can run out into your vineyard and chase that fox away. Maybe you got to get some hounds in your life. They're going to go chase down those foxes with you. So foxes can be fighting, can be infidelity, another major marriage killer. The third reason for divorce in America is finances. What kinds of debt are you bringing into your marriage? Maybe you have student loan debt. Maybe you got some, secret credit card debt that you haven't, you're just paying the minimum payments on. How did you handle your finances on your own? Maybe you're the saver and your spouse is the spender, or, vice versa. But here's the thing. When two come together, last week we said that they become one flesh. We're talking about sexually. But this is also true financially. That when two come together, you are one flesh financially as well. Your income is their income. Their debt is your debt. And if your spouse has a secret bank account that their paychecks go to and you don't have access to that, that's a problem. That's a red flag. You got to catch that fox. So finances can be one of those foxes that you have to catch. Maybe your fox is your fitness. You used to be overweight, but you've been working out, getting attention from people at the gym, and it's leading you to look outside of your marriage for that validation. Foxes can be anything from an addiction to pride, jealousy, an unforgiving attitude, a lack of trust, a lack of intimacy. It could be abuse. Whatever those issues are, you have to catch the foxes, or those foxes will catch you. So here's the problem. The problem is that a lot of us would rather tame our foxes than catch them. We like our foxes. I brought a couple friends with me today. I got this guy and this guy. These are my kids' stuffed animals. We like our foxes. Our foxes are cute, right? They're cuddly. We make them into stuffed animals and pillows and little things that our kids can cuddle with. See, foxes may look cute and cuddly at a distance, or, in terms of like the toys that we make them into, but you don't want to mess with a fox. See, we had a fox outside our house recently, and I snapped a photo of it. It is not cute. It is not cuddly. It was this mangy creature, and it definitely had rabies, right? This is the fox that was outside of our house. It was kind of gross, right? And I kept my distance, But I think the church is full of fox tamers. I think the church is full of people who think that we can tame our fox, domesticate it, make it our pet. Like, we're like the Tiger King, right? We could just have this fox that we can bring into our house and just domesticate it, make it our pet. I can control my fox. I can control this thing, right? We think we can, but the fox ends up controlling us. Maybe you think, well, if I only look at softcore porn, that's not so bad. It could be worse, right? I can manage that. Or you think, well, I maxed out 5 credit cards already, but I can afford the minimum payment, so I can just take out one more credit card. It'll be okay. Right? Or every time I drink, my wife and we get into a fight, and I know alcohol is not the best thing for my marriage, but, it's my fox. I love it. I can stop anytime I want. Right? You got to catch that fox like Dora the Explorer. You got to say, swipe or no swiping, swipe or no swiping, swipe or no swiping. You got to get out of my vineyard, you fox. Get out. Right? You have no place here. Catch that fox. Trap the fox. Kill the fox. Catch the foxes before those foxes ruin your vineyard. before they ruin your marriage, before they ruin your life. You know, I recently watched the movie Elvis. Excellent movie, and I expected to win a lot of Oscars. Tonight at the Oscars as they air tonight. It's a great movie, but prior to the movie, all I really knew about Elvis was from Uncle Jesse on Full House. So it was kind of enlightening to learn more about his life and his music. But I mean, what a legend this guy was. But I think the word I would use to sum up Elvis as a person is the word conflicted. See, Elvis was a conflicted man who had his foxes of drugs, women, and fame. And there's one scene toward the end of the movie where his wife, Priscilla, she's in the car with him and she's pleading with him to get help for his drug addiction. She says, don't do it for me. Do it for your daughter, your 5-year-old daughter. And I'm watching this movie and I'm just like pleading with Elvis, come on, man, come on, catch the fox. I know how the story ended. I know that he died at 42 years old. But I'm saying, Elvis, come on, man, catch the foxes. They're ruining your marriage. They're ruining your life. See, we got to catch the foxes. The reality is that you can't catch the foxes unless you understand one more thing about those foxes. And until you understand this last thing, you're going to just keep catching the same foxes over and over again and releasing them into the wild. And they're going to come right back into your garden, into your vineyard. See, there's one more thing you need to know about foxes. This is going to sound corny, but you got to remember this, okay? Inside every fox is a fish, a shellfish. Every time you catch a fox, you think you're catching the fox, but you're really catching a fish. A selfish, right? What I mean is this, that every problem is really about selfishness. It's about putting your needs first. See, the root of every sin is selfishness. Think about it. That was the first sin in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, they disobeyed God out of pride and selfishness. They wanted to be like God. Think about your sins. Porn is putting your needs first. Refusing to forgive is putting your needs first. When you're angry, it's typically because your needs weren't met, right? It's selfish. Inside every fox is a fish, the fish of selfishness. And if you're going to catch that fox, you got to kill the fish. You got to put your selfishness to death. And the Apostle Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. I mean, how many people get into marriages out of selfish ambition? We don't say this out loud, but we think, well, my spouse is there to fulfill my needs. They're there to make me happy. And when they stop making me happy, when they stop fulfilling my needs, I no longer need this marriage. And we talked about this in week 2 of the series, that so many of us, we get into a relationship expecting the other person to fix us, to complete us, right? To quote Jerry Maguire, you complete me. But Jerry Maguire is a liar. You see, no person is able to truly complete you. I love the way that Gary Thomas puts it in his book, Sacred Marriage. He says, what if God designed marriage to make us holy more than to make us happy? Let me say that again. What if God designed marriage to make us holy more than to make us happy? See, marriage is not about your personal happiness. I mean, it's certainly one of the benefits of it, and you will experience happiness in marriage. But the ultimate goal of marriage is not about happiness. It's about holiness. And that means doing nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. And Paul goes on to say, rather, instead of doing that, do this. In humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. See, catching the foxes means you're putting your spouse's needs above your own. This is easy to say, but it's very hard to live out. When you're in the middle of a heated battle and there's foxes encroaching on all sides of your vineyard, it's easy to point out the ways that my wife has wronged me, but so much harder to acknowledge the ways that I have fallen short, to say, I'm sorry. See, how do you find the motivation to put your spouse first when all you want to do is put your needs first? See, it comes in remembering that Christ showed us the way. Paul goes on, he says, in your relationships with one another, see, in your marriage, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. What is that mindset, Paul? He says, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. See, listen, if anyone had the right to be selfish, if anyone had the right to hold on to anything, it's Jesus. He's God. I mean, last time I checked my marriage, I'm not God. You're not God. So if Jesus didn't use people and things for his own advantage, neither should we. So what did he do instead? It says, rather, instead, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness. See, Jesus made himself nothing in order to serve others. Jesus would tell his disciples, he said, if you want to become great, you have to become less. You have to become a servant. If you try to hold on to your life, you're going to lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will find it. See, this is the great reversal of the way of Jesus. It's the mystery, the secret to a marriage that's secure is when you serve your spouse. When you kill the fish of selfishness, you serve your spouse and you put their needs above your own. Your marriage gains security. It gains strength. And I know that sometimes that's the last thing that we want to do when you're in the middle of a fight. But we can only humble ourselves when we truly understand that Christ humbled himself for us. See, Paul says that being found in appearance as a man, that Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. See, until you truly understand what Christ did for you, you can't truly serve others. While your vineyard was swarming with foxes, so much so that you could be characterized that you could be a fox. You're a fox, right? While you were a sinner beyond saving, Jesus humbled himself and went to the cross for you. And every sin you've ever committed, past, present, and future, every fox that you've embraced as this is mine, this is my little sin pattern that I love, everything, every fox, every sin has been nailed to that cross. See, you are no longer defined by your hellish foxes. You are defined by your heavenly Father. He's given you a new identity, a new vineyard. And now every day you wake up, you get to go out and you get to go catch those foxes. You get to kill the fish of selfishness and humble yourself to serve other people, specifically your spouse, with the same humble service that Christ showed to you. Here's the secret. Are you ready? The secret to a marriage that's secure. It's going to sound a little Dr. Seuss-ish, right? But I want you to remember this. The secret is this: catch the fox, kill the fish, to see your vineyard flourish. That's the secret. The secret to a marriage that's secure is to catch the foxes. Deal with those problems early on. Don't let them build a den in your vineyard. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Deal with it. Work on it. Fight for your marriage. And kill the fish. You got to kill your selfishness. Remember what Christ did for you. He humbled himself. Catching your foxes means humbling yourself and saying, I'm sorry. Because Christ humbled himself for you, now go and do that for others. And as you do this, you're gonna see your marriage, your vineyard start to flourish. This past fall, as I was working through the one-year Bible, my reading one morning was this very passage in Song of Songs. Catch the foxes. And I thought, oh, that's a good principle for marriage. I'm gonna hold on to that for a rainy day, put it in my pocket. And I went on with my day, and man, little did I know that very night I would need to pull that one out of my pocket. And Kendall and I, we would get into this big fight. Man, I don't remember what it was. I don't remember any details of it, just that I was right, she was wrong, right? That's the way it always is. I was right, she was wrong. And she was so mad at me. And so mad that she didn't want to sleep in the same bed as me, that she packed her things up and she slept in the guest bedroom down the hallway. And let me tell you, I didn't stop her. I got in my bed all petty, like, yeah, that's fine. I'll just, stretch out in my bed. I don't have to deal with anything tonight. I'm just going to be by myself in this bed. It's going to be fine. I was too mad and too stubborn. All I could think was, I'm just going to get the best sleep in my whole life. That's fine. You can sleep wherever you want. I turned the lights off and I closed my eyes, and man, I could have fallen asleep. I fall asleep quick, really easily. And I was tired, and the last thing I wanted to do, it's like 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night. The last thing I wanted to do was talk about this. And as I lay there, all I heard, catch the foxes, catch the foxes, catch the foxes. Matt, you got to catch the foxes. Okay, God, fine. I get it. I hear you. I don't want to catch the foxes. Catching the foxes means I have to go tell my wife I'm sorry. I don't want to do that, but that's what I'm going to do because Jesus, that's what you did for me. You humbled yourself. And so that's what I got to do right now. And I got out of bed, I went down the hallway, and I caught that fox. And through tears, we worked through that issue, that fox. See, if I didn't catch the fox, it's not that the next morning we'd be signing the divorce papers and throwing away our marriage, but man, things would have been set in a direction, in a trajectory, had we not decided to catch that fox. See, to not let the sun go down on our anger, to not give the devil a foothold. And for some of you, your marriages, the devil's got his claws in you. And he's playing with you. He's playing with you like a fox plays with its food. And he wants to steal. He wants to kill. He wants to destroy your marriage. And if you don't catch the fox, that fox is going to catch you. And some of you watching right now, you're working through some serious issues. And you're ready to just throw in the towel. You got to catch the fox. Don't give the enemy a chance to ruin your vineyard. Catching foxes takes teamwork. Maybe you need to release some hounds out into your marriage, out into your vineyard to catch those foxes. You need some friends that can be in your life to hold you accountable, to scare off the threats in your life. Catch the fox, kill the fish, to see your vineyard flourish. Let's pray right now. Father, God, how much we need this, how much the marriages in America need this. God, thank you for not holding out the secret on us. Thank you for not, just making this a mystery that we could never figure out. But you've put these things in your word so that we can run to you and we can open up the Bible to discover the truth and discover the secret of what it means to have a marriage that's secure. And God, it comes in dealing with these problems in our marriage. But we can't deal with these problems when we're filled with pride. The only way is to truly humble ourselves, to love others as you have loved us. God, just moments before you would be arrested and crucified, you were washing your disciples' feet. God, may we wash our spouses' feet, even though we're so upset with them, even though we've got issues with them. May we serve them out of love, the same love that you showed to us when we were at our darkest moments. God, may we catch the foxes. Even if we're single, God, prepare us for the day that maybe we meet our spouse or maybe we never meet our spouse. But God, these are good principles, whether we ever marry or not. God, for the marriages that are broken, for the people who are divorced, God, I pray that they would find healing. That if it's their own doing that brought an end to their marriage, God, that they would find freedom. And if it's their spouse that did that, God, that they would find forgiveness. God, continue your work in your children. Thank you that we are not defined by our hellish foxes, but we're defined by our Heavenly Father. We are not a fox. We are a sheep of your pastures, God. So thank you that you are the shepherd, the good shepherd who laid his life down for us. May we lay our lives down for our spouse and for the people that we love, and even, God, for our enemies, if that is our spouse or our ex. God, we pray all of this in your precious and your holy name. Amen.
Let's put our hands together. Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? I see lightning, I hear thunder. Something stirring 6 feet under. We are risen with Him. Hallelujah, it is finished. See the grave, nobody in it. Dead things coming back to life again. I believe there's about to be another resurrection. Come alive, wake up, sleeper. He is risen. We are risen with Him. Paradise flung wide open. He is risen. We are risen with Him. Come alive, wake up, sleeper. He is risen. We are risen with Him. Paradise flung wide open. He is risen. We are risen with Him. I would believe that the grave is empty. No matter what, all things are possible to me. See this next part. If you see what I see, that the grave is empty, then you know what I know. Anything is possible. If you see what I see, that the grave is empty, then you know what I know. Anything is possible. Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? I see signs and I see wonders. Do you see what I see? I see lightning, I hear thunder. Do you see what I see? Something stirring 6 feet under. Come alive, wake up, sleeper. He is risen. We are risen with Him. Paradise flung wide open. He is risen. We are risen with Him.
Thank you again for joining us today.
We believe there's a next step for you to take today to connect with God and others. If you're new, we invite you to fill out a Connect card. You can do that by heading to faithauburn.info and clicking the link that says Connect card. Another simple next step is to follow us on social media.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube by searching Faith Church Auburn.
We also invite you to attend one of our in-person services, which are happening at 9 and 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings.
With our awesome kids services,
Happening at the 11 a.m. service for our kids ages 0 to 12. For all signups and next steps, visit faithauburn.info. Thanks again for watching.
and we hope you have a great week!